If everybody will take their seats, please, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to call this Town Council meeting of January 16th, 2024 to order. If you will join in standing for the saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll continue standing while Rabbi Bloom comes up and gives the invocation.
Eternal source of good, we stand before you this day and call upon you to be in our presence. Bless us and all the constituted leaders of this town council and the professional staff who partner with them to provide our community the leadership to support and maintain the values and the policies which comprise a strong, vibrant, and service-oriented ethos for the citizens of our community. We ask for your blessings as we inaugurate 2024 with the hope that the harvest of our work will deliver to us the fruit of our labor in the upcoming year. We appeal to you to pour out your spirit upon the mayor of our town and the town council, and may they govern justly, be respectful to each other, and to the citizenry of Hilton Head. We beseech you, Eternal One, to imbue us with a heartfelt respect for the tapestry of interwoven colors of people and faith traditions which comprise Hilton Head's diversity and its creative energy to make our town a blessing to the state of South Carolina and to the nation. May your loving presence over this island be a constant reminder that our efforts in government must always protect the sanctuary of the environment, which is the cornerstone of our life and way of life. So may it be your will, and I hope everyone will join me as we say, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Do we have any changes to the agenda today?
Sir, we do not.
I have a motion to approve the agenda as written. We got a first and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. So moved. Next, we have approval of the minutes from the December 3rd, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move adoption as written.
Second.
We got a first and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising.
I was not able to be here. I did listen to the video, but I would usually abstain if I were not here.
Okay.
Counselor.
All right. Thank you. Report of the town manager.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, members of the public. A couple things, just some various items. I'm sure you've all heard, but I think it's important that we just slow down and understand some progress that we're making here internally as a staff. So we've announced a chief housing officer, Quincy White. We've announced and hired also a chief environmental officer in TJ Jett. And so those were two key positions that we have been recruiting and seeking to fill for a period of time. So congrats to those folks, to Quincy and to TJ, and also congrats to us and this team for bringing such great professionals on board. We're under contract with our land management ordinance. I know that has been a heavy topic and a big one at Public Planning Committee as well as in the community. Sean drew a blank on the company, but I know that you've made a great presentation and introduction at the recent Public Planning Committee. Name of the company? Code Studio. Maybe they can help with our microphones. And then we are days away from having a resilience plan under contract. So we've been negotiating the LMO contract, the scope of work, the cost, and the timing, and we are getting very close to announcing that resilience plan contractor. Staff participated, and I know members of our community have as well, but the MLK Junior Walk, we all participated in yesterday, and I just want to say a big thank you to Galen, but also to everybody involved. So, and lastly, I am getting very close, I believe, to solidifying a finance director. We've interviewed, the positions remained open for some time, and I have had with Josh and with Jeff several interviews, and we believe we are down to a finalist candidate that we are talking with next week. So stay tuned, and thank you. That concludes my
Okay,
report.
Thank you. Proclamation recognizing second helping. So if I get second helpings to come up, that would be wonderful. And a little note about second helpings. Many years ago, I was on United Wales on the allocations committee for hunger in Beaufort County. I had absolutely no idea the amount of food that was distributed throughout the county, the millions of pounds that were distributed each year. And just on a personal note, what that taught me was invaluable. So, the town of Hilton Head Island, commendation honoring second helpings. Whereas over 20,000 residents of Beaufort, Jasper, and Hampton counties cannot afford all the food that they need and suffer food insecurity. And whereas Second Helpings is the only non-profit food rescue organization striving to eliminate hunger in this area and provide food free of charge for our neighbors in need. And whereas this organization was started on Hilton Head Island in 1991 by residents who were concerned with feeding the hungry. And whereas 158 residents of Hilton Head Island and 459 throughout the area volunteer with Second Helpings each year. And whereas local grocery stores and other outlets voluntarily donate food for rescue instead of filling our landfills with food that is acceptable for consumption. And whereas the community supports Second Helpings through grants, food drives, direct donations, and other ways. And whereas Second Helpings provides rescued and supplemental food to 8 food pantries, soup kitchens, and family programs in Hilton Head Island and 54 throughout the area. And whereas this organization has recently rescued its 50 millionth pound of food that is distributed free to our neighbors in need. Now, therefore, I, Alan R. Perry, Mayor of Town of Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, do hereby commend Second Helpings for rescuing its 50 millionth pound of food for the residents of our community. In testimony whereof, I have run to set my hand and cause this seal of the Town of Hilton Head Island to be affixed the 16th day of January of our Lord, 2024. Congratulations. How many tires have y'all got? Awesome. Thank y'all so much. Now we will move on to Natalie Harvey, who will give us a presentation or an update on cultural affairs.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Manager Orlando. Thank you for the opportunity to share information about the Office of Cultural Affairs. It's been a long 6, almost 7 months since I presented, and a lot of things have happened. So I just wanted to share a few of those with you as I work through the strategic plan of the Cultural Affairs Office. These are some of the highlights of the activities that the office takes care of on a day-to-day basis, as well as seasonally. We continue to implement the strategic plan through promoting our art, culture, and history, increasing access to historical, cultural, and artistic appearances. Public art projects are very visible in the community, outreach, as well as community-oriented programs, and our very well-known Lantern Parade and Crescendo. These are a few highlights of some of the marketing this year. We were fortunate enough to have cover of Uptown Magazine as well as CH2, some great publicity online, as well as the Culture HHI newsletter, which goes out to about 5,000 recipients each issue. There were 25 sent out in 23. There were about 9,000 followers on Facebook, up 41% this year versus last year. So we're making a lot of progress digitally. I also work with our local media and out-of-town media when they're looking for information for social media and information about the depth and breadth of our culture, history, and art here in Hilton Head. And recently, we have added a part-time staff person. Robin Swift is here today. She is out actively greeting our visitors in the community, hitting the ground running the week of the Lantern Parade, and shares a lot of information about the calendar of events with our visitors. It's been really helpful. We had the Maharaja Flamenco Trio perform at our Crescendo kickoff. And the best part about this was the next day they went to the Boys and Girls Club for a free workshop with their students. We've had 10 to 12 exhibits at the Rec Center, several exhibits here at Town Hall, and I expect that with our Arts Council, we'll have 20 exhibitions at the Island Rec Center this year. We also installed the very popular piano at the park at Shelter Cove, assisted with the poetry trail, as well as lantern making workshops, materials, and support for many of our clubs, schools, and not-for-profit organizations. Public art is visible around town, and I'm pleased to say that the sculpture trail that we all celebrated last year is becoming one of the most popular places on the island for people to enjoy some of our public art offerings as well as our natural beauty. It was just recently featured in a Condé Nast video with the VCB and is something that they also featured in their vacation planner. Temporary pieces at the Shelter Cove Sculpture Trail will be replaced in August or early September, so stay tuned. And we're most excited that the Carolina Paracrete is finally here on Hilton Head Island for good. It was installed at the end of October. It's currently at the Low Country Celebration Park and is there for all to see as they travel by bike or on foot or even down Pope Avenue. The Poetry Trail was a new project this year, which is features in the Cultural Trail as well as online, with 26 sites and businesses, our not-for-profit organizations and sculptures being featured in it. And a long-awaited 3-panel kiosk is expected to be installed at the Rowan Sailing Center. I hesitate to give a date in public, but we are getting closer every day. It traces the history of the Hilton Head Island Fishing Cooperative, the efforts to keep BASF out of our environment and out of our region, and it will feature a 15-foot mural that honors the Captain Dave shrimp trawler that traveled to Washington, D.C. So look for an invitation to that ribbon cutting very soon. The Crescendo events this year were a huge success. We had over 100 events listed in our official calendar, several ancillary events that were added after it went to print. These ranged in small-scale poetry readings to park-filling concerts, as well as several events sponsored specifically by the OCA, the family programs at the community market, original songwriter series at the park, poetry trail crawl and readings, and our kickoff celebration at Shelter Cove. The Lantern Parade was a resounding success, and we have had several post-event meetings about how to improve on that for next year. And then, of course, we ended up also, the Office of Cultural Affairs was instrumental in helping with the 360/40 celebration with the community picnic and concert in the Hilton Head Island Jam Music Festival, which I hope to have news about our dates coming up this year. This Hilton Head Island Jam has been instrumental in getting some of our local businesses and also to know some out-of-town musicians who have actually come back to Hilton Head Island to provide performances for our residents and visitors. So those connections about getting the word out about the great buzz on Hilton Head Island of our local art and culture scene is actually getting a lot of traction outside the community. So with that said, we wrapped up the year with our tree lighting and menorah lighting at Low Country Celebration Park, and a great way to end our year to honor our community. So as I look forward to the next year, of course, Crescendo Lantern Parade, public art, as I mentioned, our website is, Culture HHI is being redesigned and updated, as well as encouraging our continued partnerships, social media, and connecting residents with visitors at special events. So thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
appreciate your support.
Great work.
Thank you.
All right, next we will have the presentation of the Town of Hilton Head Island financial audit, fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Trey Scott, partner of Malden and Jenkins, is here to make a presentation. Jeff, you first.
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff Harriman, Interim Finance Director. I just want to introduce Trey Scott, partner with the CPA firm Malden and Jenkins. The FY23 audit was the first year of a 5-year audit agreement we have with Malden Jenkins. And I just want to thank Trey and his staff for all their work on the audit and on the annual comprehensive report. And we look forward to, Trey, we look forward to working with you over the next coming years. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff, for that very nice introduction. Mr. Mayor, Council, certainly pleased to be here with you all this afternoon to discuss the results of the town's 2023 audit. Just give you a real quick idea of why I'm here. Since this was the first year we audited you all, I kind of wanted to introduce you to Malden and Jenkins really quickly, give you an overview of your or our audit report, your compliance reports, and your financial statements, go over some required communications with you, and then certainly answer any questions that you all may have. Really quickly about Malden and Jenkins, we were founded over 100 years ago. We serve over 650 governmental entities throughout the Southeast. We do this across 13 offices in 5 states. And we provide over 135,000 hours annually to our governmental clients. So we're certainly committed to the governmental industry and serving local governments and state governments. But enough about us. I think what is of particular importance to you all is our audit opinion. I think, as you all know, the financial statements themselves, that ACFR is the responsibility of the town's management. It's our responsibility as your auditor to express an opinion on that financial information based on our audit. And we do that by following generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. And I'm pleased to report to you all today that we issued the town a clean, or what we call an unmodified opinion. And what that basically means is that the financial statements are presented fairly, or present fairly the financial position and the results of the town's operations as of June 30, 2023. And that's what you're looking for, right? It's a clean opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that we can provide to you as your auditor. A couple of other reports in your ACFR as well, a Yellow Book report. So if we had any significant deficiencies or material weakness type findings that we needed to report to you, that's where those would be reported. And we had none. I think that's just a testament to the hard work of the finance department that they do on a daily basis, and certainly something I think they should be commended for, and something you all should be very proud of. Additionally, anytime you spend more than $750,000 in federal expenditures, you're required to have a single audit. And we performed that single audit on your major grant program, had no issues as it related to the single audit as well, provided you with a clean or unmodified opinion on your compliance with those grant requirements. So another great thing to be able to report to you. Additionally, I think you all know this, but in case you don't, you all present what's called an annual comprehensive financial report, or an ACFR. And an ACFR goes above and beyond your basic general required reporting of a local government. You present a couple of additional sections outside of your basic financial statements and footnotes. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into this thing on the part of the finance department. I know they're very proud of this document, and I think, again, something you all should be very proud of as well. It's submitted every year into the GFOA Certificate of Excellence program. It takes them a while to review it, but we don't anticipate there being any issues with you all receiving that sought-after certificate again for the 2023 financial statements. So we'll jump into the numbers a little bit now. In your ACFR, you present 2 sets of financial statements. You have a government-wide set of financial statements, which takes all of your funds, kind of rolls them up into one column, giving you that big picture view of the town. And you only see these government-wide financial statements in your ACFR just this one time a year. You're more apt to see in your fund level, general fund, stormwater fund, those kinds of things, more on a monthly basis, and we'll talk a little bit about those here in just a second. But just kind of some key points about your government-wide financial statements. Good bottom line, $384 million, that's that next to last bullet point, and we increased it by about $46 million this year. So that's a good, strong net position for the town for sure. One of the more common questions I get is, how healthy are we? And an audit's not designed to tell you how healthy you are, but there are certain key indicators, financial indicators you can look at to kind of determine or gauge that health. And one of the places I like to look is what's going on with our capital assets. Are we reinvesting in the town, or are we allowing our capital asset base to age? And that's kind of what this graph shows you. You can see that blue column are your depreciable assets. The green is your accumulated depreciation, so how much of those assets have actually depreciated over the course of time. So the closer the blue column and the green column are to one another would tell me that your assets are much older. But you all have continued to reinvest in the town. Looking at this graph, it's a really good, healthy-looking capital asset activity over the course of the last 5 years. And so I have no real concerns as it relates to that, so that's a great thing. So moving on from your government-wide information to your fund level information, your general fund, more specifically, that's usually the big sibling fund of a government. And I'm not going to read these numbers to you, but the ones I really want to point out to you, increased your fund balance this year. That's the third to last bullet point, about 4.4 million. Another place to kind of gauge health is how many months or days of expenditures do you have in fund balance at year end? You had about 2.6 months of expenses or expenditures in unassigned fund balance. That's in that next to last bullet there. But if we look at unrestricted fund balance, so that's the combination of your committed, your assigned, and your unassigned fund balance, you've got 8.4 months of expenditures in your fund balance. So that's actually a really good place to be, considering where you are geographically. We can't predict the weather. We can't predict global pandemics. So we do need to have a little bit of cushion, especially considering you're a June 30 year end. One of your primary sources of revenue is property taxes. When do we collect property taxes? Typically November, December, really. So we have some time. Those revenues are not going to be coming in that we need to make sure we can get through to the next property tax collection cycle. And then finally, another good place I kind of look for health is your liquid ratio. So how many times could you pay your current liabilities with the current assets that you had on hand? And you could have done that 3.1 times at June 30. So we're talking about your payables, your accrued payroll, those kinds of things. So that's a good liquid position as well. This just kind of looks at things graphically as well. The one column I really want you to pay attention to, revenues and expenses and expenditures fluctuate. It happens, and we can see the growth there since 2020. But it's that orange kind of column, and that's your unrestricted fund balance, so the combination of your committed and unassigned fund balances. And look at that, how it's trended up over the course of the last 5 years. So that's always a good thing to see, especially when we consider 2020 was probably at our low because of the year of the pandemic. So another place for health, remember we were talking about those expenditures, how many months of expenditures you had in fund balance. You can see we've grown that from about a little more than 6 months to a little over 8 months over the course of the last 5 years. So also a very good looking trend as well. And then your stormwater fund or your business type activity, I'll move through this pretty quickly. Good, nice, healthy increase in net position this year. And one of those places I gauge health with a business type activity like a stormwater fund is what's going on with cash flows, and more specifically, your cash flows from operations. If you look at any private sector business, it should be those cash flows or cash that's coming in from operations that we use elsewhere throughout the business. Same thing goes for your stormwater fund. We had good, strong operating cash flows over the course of the last 3 years, especially considering what was going on in 2019 and 2020. We were using cash in operations in those years. So stormwater has certainly come a long way from 2019 to 2023 and looks to be in a very healthy position. Your revenues far exceeded your expenditures there. You're getting that net position back to where it probably needed to be. Again, good looking graph there. A few other items of note, just kind of looking at things from a government-wide perspective. I talked about reinvesting in the town. You did that to the tune of almost 15 million this year in increases to your capital assets, paid down about 16 million in debt. We implemented a new GASB standard. I know you all are so excited about hearing about those, I'm sure, but didn't have a real big impact, but it was significant enough to where we had to record it. And it's these subscription-based IT arrangements where formerly we just expense these when they're incurred, but the accounting standards board, the governmental accounting standards board said, no, we need to start putting those on the balance sheet. So we implemented that standard this year. Your net pension liability, so the pension benefits you're going to pay over a very long period of time to those retirees. It did increase a little bit this year, but that's just one of those numbers you don't have a lot of control over. PEBA tells you what you've got to contribute, and you're also kind of at the mercy of what the market's doing as well. So there's no real concern. It's going to increase. It's probably going to decrease a little bit next year. And then also, no new GASB standards going forward. We do have a couple, should be very minimal impact on you also. The GASB's given us a little bit of a reprieve over the next few years, which is very, very nice. So that's a great thing as well. And then finally, just some things that I'm required to communicate to you all. Again, clean opinion, no audit findings, no management letter comments. Again, I think that's just a testament to the hard work of the finance department. It's something you all should be very proud of. Your financial statement disclosures, your accounting estimates, all of these are integral parts of your financial statements, and they're the responsibility of management. We had no difficulties in dealing with management, the performance of our audit, no disagreements with management. We had no uncorrected misstatements, so we didn't have any past adjustments, so everything was posted to the accounts of the town. And then finally, just want to make sure you all are aware that we're independent of the town in accordance with all of the applicable standards of our profession. And that pretty much concludes what I wanted to report to you all today. Again, we worked primarily with the finance department, a very good group of people, very professional. That's very refreshing from my standpoint as your auditor. And it certainly has been a pleasure to serve you all, and we look forward to serving you in the future. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the dais, from council? Yes, Glenn?
We live in a community that is subject to serious storm risks periodically. We never know when they're coming. We have reserves there. I'm wondering if you have comments on the reserves that we have for those items.
You know, obviously I can't tell you what I think the right number would be, but I think you all are in a very strong position with how much you have committed your fund balance for disaster recovery. Because something that folks don't think a lot about is, you know, yeah, FEMA and GMA, or FEMA and South Carolina are gonna probably reimburse you for a good bit of those costs, but who's got to pay for it up front? You know, I mean, everybody's gonna be pretty unhappy with a bunch of branches and flooding and things if that doesn't get taken care of immediately. And FEMA's not gonna pay for that immediately. It's gonna be a reimbursement process that sometimes takes several years to take care of. So I think you're in a good, strong position fund balance wise, and certainly keep trending in the right direction.
Thank you. That gives us some comfort.
Any other comments? Betsy?
Thank you for your report. And I should note that it's always good to have a good report card, or a great report card. And with a different auditor this year, we had a great report card last year. So again, I want to thank the manager and the financial department staff for the work, and for our auditors at looking at our work. I do have one question about the report, and I think I can guess what your answer would be. But in the notes to financial statements, they range from page 32 up through 93. That's a lot of notes. Is there anything amongst that 60-something pages of notes to which you should draw our attention?
Yeah, I think I tried to hit on the high points there. You know, your capital asset additions, you paying down your debt the way you should be. The net pension liability is one of those things that's probably about 10 pages or 11 pages of those. What did you say, 62 pages?
Okay.
Yeah, the GASB's really added a lot of pages to our reports. I have a client that didn't do an ACFR, so their report was a little bit shorter. Then they started doing one. And 10 years later, I think they went from about 42 pages to 117 pages. So, and that's not counting that is counting the additional pages for, all of these new changes in the standards that continue to come out. So I tried to hit on all of the high points that were in there for you.
But nothing in there to draw our attention to?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Well, I'll just say thank you for your work and service to us, but also congratulations to the finance team. That's a real recommendation and reflection on what y'all do. So thank you. Thanks. So now we'll have a discussion of the South Carolina Attorney General opinion pertaining to Act 57 of 2023. Mr. Gruber.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. I want to start off today by going over some information that I know we've previously covered, but we're going to cover a couple of other items with regards to Act 57, the use of both state and local accommodations taxes that have come up since the last time that I've spoken on this issue. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. There we go. All right, so we're going to cover, just again, very briefly, how state and local accommodations taxes are collected, the impacts from the adoption of Act 57, 2023, the statutory timelines on the use of both state and local accommodations taxes, how we here at the town are currently using our state and local accommodations taxes, considerations on the use of general fund public funds for private use, and then talk about the critical path outline and timeline for implementation of various policy considerations. So again, just to cover a little bit of background and history again, a local accommodations tax is 3%. Here on Hilton Head, we take 2% of that and allocate it towards beach preservation. So effectively, we have a 1% local accommodations tax that we use here on Hilton Head. And then the state accommodations tax is a 2% charge on transient and overnight accommodations. The revenues from which have to be used for what are constituted as tourism-related expenditures. So Act 57 of 2023 amended the statutory language for both state and local accommodations taxes. In some ways, it amended them in similar ways. In other ways, they are separate and different from one another. So the ways in which they're similar, that both statutes were amended to provide that the expenditures of funds for the development of workforce housing were to be considered as an authorized tourism-related expenditure. Both statutes also placed a cap of 15% on the maximum amount of both state and local accommodations taxes that could be expended for workforce housing purposes. And both statutes set a sunset to those respective pieces of legislation at 7 years from the date of adoption, unless the General Assembly takes additional action to extend them further. However, where they differ is that state accommodation taxes require several procedural steps that must be done first before a local government can begin awarding funds underneath the state accommodations tax. And we're going to cover that here in just a little bit more in depth in a minute. But when it comes to local accommodations taxes, that same language was not included. So as long as the local government has local accommodations taxes, wants to budget for their use for workforce housing purposes, and does not exceed the 15% cap, they're free to expend those however they see fit. So in terms of using state accommodations taxes, within the existing statutory scheme, there's a requirement that those funds must be expended within a certain period of time of their collection. And basically it says that those funds must be spent within 2 years of their receipt. There are two ways in which that can change. The first is that the local government, upon the time limit may be extended upon the recommendation of the local governing body and approval of the Oversight Committee. And the Oversight Committee is the Tourism Expenditure Review Committee, the TURC. So that's a group at the state level that oversees the expenditure of all state accommodations taxes. And then upon a 2-3 forward those funds for a specific program or project that is investing in the control and repair of waterfront erosion, beach renourishment, or the development of workforce housing, so long as the program is identified with specificity and that information is communicated to the Oversight Committee, which again is the TURC, on how those funds have been committed, including the beginning balance, the deposits, the expenditures, and the ending balance. So again, 2-year time limit to expend those, unless TURC allows you to extend that time, or unless you've got a specific project where you've encumbered the funds, but they're spent over a period of more than 2 years because the project is so large that it may take longer than that. All right, so covering how the town currently uses its local and state accommodations taxes. Currently, we use 100% of our local accommodations taxes to support various governmental services. So in the local accommodations tax statute, it talks about an appropriate use of these funds to be for public safety services. So in looking at the town's operations, those can be attributed to fire rescue, both operations and equipment and capital needs, our emergency preparedness and response, our 911 and communications dispatch, and then also public facilities operations that relate back to tourism-related infrastructure. When it comes to state accommodations taxes, we use our state accommodations taxes here for a number of things. In this particular fiscal year 2024 budget, we allocated $3.5 million to the general fund, above and beyond what's required to be distributed pursuant to the statutory formula. We also allocated $3 million to capital projects. We are proposing to allocate $2 million for land acquisition, and then council, as part of its annual discretionary grant program, awarded $4.2 million as part of this year's discretionary grant program out of state accommodations taxes. So in looking at what we collected and what is the permissible cap and availability, for local accommodations taxes, we collected $6.9 million in 2023, which at a 15% cap creates a capped value of just slightly over $1 million. But because we transferred 100% as part of our budget, there is zero balance available under local accommodations taxes. Under state accommodations taxes, we collected just a little over $13 million. We're required by statute to distribute certain percentages to the town's general fund and to the DMO. So you subtract $4.6 million off of those collections, and then you apply the 15% cap, which gives you a capped value of just slightly less than 1.3 million. Now, in terms of state accommodations tax availability, I'm going to walk you through this schedule here. And I've got to apologize. This feels a little wonky because we're combining both a calendar year grant program and a fiscal year budget. And so there's some overlap in timing. And so I'm going to kind of walk through this slowly to make sure that it's easily understandable. So we start with a base value as of July 1st, 2022 of $1.1 million. And then we factor in what we collected in fiscal year 23 for collections and interest earnings, which combined gives us just slightly less than $14 million. But when added to the carryover balance, it gave a total fiscal year 23 available fund of just slightly less than 15 million. So from that, we do required distributions to the general fund and to the DMO, which cumulatively total 4.6 million. We also then provided allocations in our adopted budget totaling 6.5 million, and we awarded grant awards of 4.2 million. So you start here with 1.1, you add it to the 13 million to give you 14.8, and then you start subtracting these numbers before you start adding revenue back in. Because again, now we're transitioning over from fiscal year 23 over into fiscal year 24. So our actual revenues from July to September were slightly over $5 million. We have not received our fourth quarter distribution from the state yet, so we are projecting our October through December revenues to be 1.6 million. And our actual interest earnings as of today are 284,000. So you add 7 million back into it, but then again, you have to start doing your required distributions pursuant to the statute, which would take back out 2.3 million. So again, start at 1.1, add 13.7, gives you 14.8, subtract that, subtract 6.5, subtract 4.2, add 7, subtract 2.3, and it gives you a total available balance as of today of slightly more than $4 million. And then what we're holding for possible additional uses are planned land purchases pending adoption of a budget amendment and possible workforce housing pending town council approval of the F&A committee's recommendation for workforce housing investment. And so that would give you a cumulative amount of about 3.2 million, which gives you an available balance after the additional uses of slightly more than $800,000. Now, again, I know that's difficult, so if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to go over those with you. And I apologize for that. It's just the way that the timing's set up in terms of calendar year and fiscal year.
Josh, just to be clear, if you go back to that real quick, on that DMO funding, the 30% after the first 25 is for half a year of the 2.02 million.
Yeah, July to December in terms of those. Now, the 25,000 is just straight off the top. But in terms of the 30% and the 5%, that is just the July to December timeframe. All right, so considerations on using, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I just want to catch you before we lost that slide. So there's, I guess maybe you said this. There it is, up at the very top. The carryover of 1,139,792. Is any of that subject to that 2-year maximum time period for expending it?
At this point, typically we do a first in, first out. So the revenues that would have come in would have been the first revenues that we expended. So more than likely those revenues were collected sometime before June 30th of 2023. So we're still within 2 years.
We're still good. Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Hey, Josh, I just have a favor to ask, and if it's different for everyone else, then I can adjust to it. But the pointer thing,
Yes,
I'm trying to look at the whole picture, and it's really distracting for me.
my apologies.
Thanks.
I think there's one on here where I can put it as a red dot rather than the spotlight.
No, either way,
it's
I'm just
still
trying to look at the
distracting.
numbers and go back and forth in my head, and it's limiting and it's hard. Thank you.
All right, so there's been a question of then using general fund monies for workforce housing purposes. So I wanted to cover that essentially the question that has to be answered anytime you would propose using general fund monies with a private entity is whether or not that expenditure constitutes a public purpose. And what we understand in terms of answering that question of does it constitute a public purpose is subject to what is essentially 4 questions. I wouldn't call it a 4-part test because they're not answered with black and white clarity, but there are 4 considerations that a local government has to determine in order to make it clear as part of the legislative record that an expenditure is in fact a public purpose. And those came out of a South Carolina Supreme Court case from a number of years ago, but essentially they state this. The first question is the ultimate goal or benefit to the public as intended by the project, whether public or private parties will be the primary beneficiary, the speculative nature of the project, and the probability that the public interest will be served and to what degree. And so again, all 4 of those questions need to be answered in some form as part of the legislative record in making a request to use public funds along with a private entity. What you have to take into consideration, however, is that the fact that Act 57 of 2023 specifically codified the allowable use of state and local aid tax funds as a permitted use for workforce housing. What that doesn't require is a 4-part test. All you have to do is for state aid tax, make sure that you've complied with the procedural requirements of adopting a housing impact analysis and amending a comprehensive plan to incorporate it. And for a local accommodations tax, just having the available funds to appropriate so long as you don't exceed the cap. As long as those 2 things are met, by and large, they're going to be allowed because the state allowed that as a specific expenditure of those funds. Going back to general funds, however, you have to incorporate those 4 questions into any expenditure because if you were subject to a challenge, you'd have to be able to show what the outcomes of those 4 questions are so that it would be clear to a court that is in fact a public expenditure. In looking at the critical path timeline for talking about use of state accommodations taxes, we've already completed the housing impact analysis. It has been distributed to all of the required entities. Tomorrow, the Planning Commission will be meeting to take up a proposal to amend the town's comprehensive plan to incorporate the housing impact analysis. Assuming that that is going to come out of the Planning Commission, it will be before the Public Planning Committee in a couple weeks on February 8th. And then assuming that it comes out of that committee, it would come before Town Council for public hearing for first reading on March 5th and for second and final reading on March 19th. And again, because we are already within our current fiscal year, if we're going to be appropriating funds out of this fiscal year's budget, we would need to do a budget amendment, which could be done contemporaneously with both first and second reading of the ordinance to incorporate the housing impact analysis. So again, the dates there are March 5th, March 19th. And then looking at what the adoption of the upcoming year's budget is, affiliated agency presentations are going to be occurring on March 12th. The Finance and Administrative Committee is going to be making recommendations to Town Council on the affiliated agency funding request on April 9th. And that information would be included in the budget for Town Council approval for first reading on May 7th and second and final reading on June 4th. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about Act 57, the use of state or local accommodations taxes, the current availability of state accommodations taxes, or the use of general fund money in partnership with private entities.
Questions from the dais? Mr. Stanford.
This will only, the adoption of this process through Act 57 will not be completed until June the 4th of this year, according to your schedule here.
So June 4th is when we're approving this upcoming year's budget. If you wanted to make an appropriation, let's just say hypothetically out of currently available state accommodations taxes, that can be concluded as early as March 19th at the meeting on which you amend your comprehensive plan and adopt a budget amendment.
I was confused about which fiscal year we were dealing with. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Wow, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, now we're going to move on to general reports from Town Council, and I'd like to kick this off if I could. I've got several things to bring to just public knowledge. I want to recognize the town staffer whose mother passed away at the age of 99, who was living with him. And she passed away just a few days before Christmas in the morning. Darren Shoemaker, and he's a traffic engineer. That afternoon, we were having some issues with one of our lights, and he was out there working on the lights the day that his mother had passed. So that is true dedication and somebody that gets their position. So that just really resonated with me because I was here, I heard about it, and then I saw him out there working. That's just awesome. Our thoughts and prayers obviously go to him for the passing of his mother, but what a kudos to the dedication that he has for this organization. Lastly, we've lost several people recently, but there are two that I want to make special note of. And first is the best chocolate chip cookie lady I've ever had chocolate chip cookies from, and they were $1.25 when I was a kid because they were this big around. Signe Gardo, in Harbortown, what she did for a lot of local folks and for the community really relates back to our history as to what our community is. And that is giving of yourself back to the community. And then we recently lost Doug Corcoran, who was one of the main architects for Sea Pines and one of the individuals that helped drive the character of our island through Charles Fraser's vision. And it's important to recognize these individuals because they go back many years. And I would suggest that if you have an opportunity to speak with the longtime Islanders, speak with them. They've got a knowledge about what our community is and why it is. And I know that we're going to go forward and do some videoing of the Gullah community. That's wonderful, but I also want to do that with the other fathers and mothers of our community as well that provide so much history as to where we are and why we are. So I just want to take a moment to recognize those three individuals because they were all and are all very special and unique to our community. So with that, any other general reports? Yes.
Just quickly, I joined the town manager in thanking the MLK Committee for Justice and all their work for honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And a special thanks, I know Rabbi Bloom was here earlier, to Congregation Beth Yam and the Queen's Chapel for the community services that were held. So thank you very much to those two religious communities within our broader community.
Okay. Any other general comments? All right. Reports of the Low Country Area Transportation Study. Mr. Sanford.
No report.
Thank you. Ms. Becker, Low Country Council of Governments.
No report.
Okay. Mr. Ames, Airport.
I do have a report, Mayor. The county airport on the island is now in its first stage of construction. It's mobilizing the contractors and will start visible work very shortly. It is expected that the doors will open for citizens about January 2026. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Mr. Stanford, Soloco.
No report, sir.
You. Mr. Brown, Island Recreation Association.
No report, sir.
Sure about that?
In joke.
I'm serious.
We'll cover it in my FNA.
Oh, okay. My bad. My mistake. I'll take that. Ms. Becker, Community Services and Public Safety Committee.
The Community Service and Public Safety Committee proposed a recommendation to the Town Council concerning the town's adoption and implementation of an integrated pest management policy. The proposed integration pest management policy was amended by the committee and will address how the town will implement at least toxic pest management strategies at its properties along the edges in the parks, the children's parks, the dog parks, in an environmentally responsible manner that is protected to human health and economically viable and accepted aesthetically. The committee supported the recommendation on a 4-0 vote. I wanted to take time and thank him for writing this out for me. And that's the reason I was stumbling over it. But I appreciate her doing that and handing it off to me. It is valuable.
Yep. Mr. Ames, PPC.
Yes, the Public Planning Committee met last Thursday, January 11th. Staff presented the status and schedule of the LMO overhaul and introduced the Conditions and Trends Assessment Report. The Public Planning Committee also approved a .45 FAR in the Forest Beach area and forwarded it to full council.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, now you report on finance and administrative.
My apologies, I did not report out the last town council meeting of our action was taken on November 14th meeting, in which we approved to recommend up to town council a memorandum of understanding for the Island Rec Center that was approved with a 4-0 vote. At our December 19th meeting, we adopted a resolution recommending town council to approve a memorandum of understanding with USCD to provide an ambassador program that also was approved with the 4 vote. At our last meeting, January 11th, we approved for consideration for town council a sponsorship agreement with the RBC Group for 2024, the amount of $400,000. We also are recommending approval of a memorandum of understanding with Coastal Community Development Corporation with a grant approval of $600,000. And lastly, we are also recommending a memorandum of understanding with Habitat for Humanity, the funding through the affiliated agency program of $500,000. That also was approved with a 4-0 vote.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Now we'll go on to appearances by citizens. Citizens who wish to speak on matters being discussed during the meeting should have submitted earlier. So Zendaya, do we have anybody signed up to speak today?
Yes, sir. Ms. Melinda Tunner.
Good afternoon. Melinda Tunner, Palmetto Hall. My comments today are regarding the William Hilton Gateway Corridor Independent Review. First, I want to thank you for recording the meetings and allowing for citizen feedback after all of the discussion. I know that recording and posting the message has a cost to it, but I think given the importance of the topic, it is money well spent. So thank you very much for doing that. I know that you'll be discussing this project during executive session today. During that session, I hope you're going to talk about the scope of the project. This is a concern I expressed at the December Town Council meeting, and that comment was regarding the kickoff meeting in November. And now I'm here in January bringing up the same issue because of scope questions that occurred during the meeting last week. It would be helpful to residents, committee members, and the consultants to have a clear understanding of what is and what is not in scope for this independent review. Emotions run high when outcomes do not align to expectations. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Thank you. Zendaya, anybody else signed up?
Yes, sir. Mr. Skip Hoagland.
Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. In 224, I will address and ask taxpayers to join me and others to stop this illegal, non-functioning town council, fully controlled by the town manager, lawyers, and CPAs who have the full power under our current political system. We need a full power, full-time CEO mayor. Honest, no lies, no conflicts, no horses in the race, and can't be influenced or controlled by local interest groups like the illegally operated tax-funded Hilton Head Chamber and the secret underground government Greater Island Council. All elected officials and councils must be restricted from being part of any outside political group that wants to influence their votes on issues that work against the best interest of all taxpayers, especially the illegal issue and worse, the private use of millions of our tax funds. Examples of misuse of tax funds for private purposes that violate South Carolina constitutional law and the Supreme Court ruling are as follows. Funding the nonprofit chamber to use tax money for private use, and profits that pay Bill Miles a $500,000 salary and perks, and worse, to hide illegal funds by laundering this money to show no profit on year-end tax returns to trick the IRS, our community, and this council. $600,000 next $600,000 of tax funds issued to private gated community CPONs to dredge Harbortown that should be paid by CPONs, HOA, and POA, not taxpayers who don't have public access to CPON's private gate. Next, workforce housing, funding a nonprofit using ATAX funds. Someone has talked A.G. Allen Wilson into a fraudulent legal opinion and adding this workforce housing language to make this legal under the accommodation tax code. This code is clear. Any tax money, ATAX money should only be used and issued for tourism, marketing, and promotion. You can count on a lawsuit. And worse, they propose taking 15% away from legal nonprofits and not deducting any money from this crooked Chamber of Commerce. It seems ethics violator Josh Gruber, Senator Tom Davis, Representatives Newton, Herb Kurtzman, and Bradley all need to be questioned on this. This is just more tax robbery. This entire council continues to vote to approve tax scams, fraud, tax theft, and you all need to be booted from public service if it's not stopped and fixed. This council and full power town employees can't just pick and choose the laws they wish to comply to. You got to comply to all of them. You know, your honest service is appreciated, but not your dishonest service. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Len Greeley. Len Greeley.
Len Greeley? I'm here to speak for Len Greeley with
Mr.
the
Hoagland,
POA.
as we have stated several times before, we do not accept the power of attorney.
You're interrupting me right now.
I
The
am
judge
not,
ruled in
because
my favor.
your
You are
time is
interrupting
not-
my time.
No, sir, I am not, because the
Yes,
clock
you
has
are.
not started.
Well,
Then I have not
I'm going to
interrupted
be
your
reading
time,
this.
but I am telling
I'm sorry,
you-
you are out of order,
No, sir,
and you are
you are.
interrupting me. I'm sorry, you're
No,
not,
sir, you
you're
are.
you're disrespecting my 3 minutes.
Mr. Hoagland, I am
Don't
not.
disrespect me.
I am not disrespecting you
Don't go against
all.
what the judge said. Don't go against
I
the
am
law.
not going against what the judge said.
Now,
You are.
You can give me a citation.
Yes, sir, we will.
Okay, thank you so much. Now let me read my speech, and don't interrupt me, please.
Don't you
I don't
tell me
interrupt
what-
you, don't
do
interrupt
not
me.
tell me what to
If
do.
you don't want me to interrupt you, don't interrupt me.
Start the clock.
Okay. Hilton Head is being compared to Washington DC, of all places. It's a perfect analogy. 80% of this island is made up of gated, non-gated communities and private ownership. 20% is a freewheeling government versus free enterprise. It's easy to spend unlimited taxpayers' money. When you need more, you just rob taxpayers and hide the money. As long as we elect councils and mayors that only serve part-time under our current political system that gives the full power to hire town managers and lawyers who are almost impossible to fire, and most have been caught in illegal acts, nothing's going to work well. What will work is a full-time, full-power CEO-type mayor that is honest, again, doesn't lie, not controlled by the special interest groups, the chamber and the Greater Island Council, and worse, made up of many elected officials. And all council members use tax funds to become chamber members. You're all chamber members. That's illegal. It's a quid pro quo. This council must fully control the budgets and hire an out-of-state audit firm that specializes in proper town financial controls, transparency, accountability, and performance metrics for all employees. Now today, we hear another fraudulent audit from a firm presentation by Trey Scott and Malden Jenkins audit firm, hired by town employees, not this council, to try and convince us this audit is credible and done under gas. This could not be further from the truth. This audit only audits the numbers it was handed by the town CPA Troyer, and only a forensic audit can identify waste, crimes, embezzlement, fraud, etc. Town employees in total control of the accounting, especially since many of them have been caught at illegal tax use, is ludicrous at best. I predict prison once we force a forensic audit on town employees. Also, council must assure that all tax funds are being used to benefit the public good and make certain these funds are issued and used legally to comply with all state and federal laws. It's illegal to fund the Chamber of Commerce, and that's a perfect example. Not one single council member is a CPA or has accounting knowledge. Alex Brown, chairman of the Finance Committee, would be like me running a beauty salon. I have no clue. We simply do not have a legal functioning government on Hilton Head. It's up to all of us to change this. Apathy is our greatest enemy. Mr. Perry, you lied and committed fraud, and you better step up and admit it before you have to answer to authorities, because that's coming on you. And while we have my lawsuit listed and the corridor items listed under the executive session, why can't you just come clean and let's all talk about it in public instead of hiding behind the doors?
All right, thank you. I was remiss in notifying Mrs. Josephine Wright, who passed away the other day. And she is the epitome of fighting for what's right. She stood her ground for her property, and that we should all learn from. So as we go through a lot of these discussions going forward regarding the LMO, we need to keep that in mind to make certain that we're protecting all. So, she was another great individual. If you didn't have a chance to meet her, I'm sorry. She was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And you know what? She lived until the moment she died. So, that being said, executive session. Mr. Orlando, we have a reason to go in executive session.
Yes, sir. As it appears on our agenda, item 9, executive session, items A, B, and C, as well as item D.
I move we go into executive session for the reasons stated by the town manager.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. So moved. Thank you. All right, so the executive committee, David, got any action taken?
Yes, there were two items that were acted on. We have a motion for both. I move that town council approve first reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of termination of a drainage easement for real property located at 316 Squire Pope Road, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina.
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for a vote. Yes, sir? Oh, you're voting? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. So moved, unanimous. Everything else?
You have a motion, I believe.
I do. I move to approve a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of a third amendment to the employment contract.
Mayor, I think somebody else needs to make the motion. I think that's why they're jumping over there.
Never mind.
Or you can pass the gavel.
You want me? Is that what?
Go ahead.
Okay. I move to approve a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of a third amendment to the employment contract by and between the town of Hilton Head Island and Mark Orlando as follows. 1, the term of the contract shall be amended to terminate on February 21, 2028, unless otherwise extended by the parties. 2, the current base compensation shall be increased by 4% effective as of December 5th, 2023. And 3, a one-time bonus of $15,000 is authorized to be paid on the first pay period following the execution of this amendment.
Have a second? Okay. And do we have any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. So moved, unanimous. And with that, we're adjourned.